I think if you had to ask the San Francisco 49ers fan base right now what their biggest concern with the San Francisco 49ers is, I think 9 out of 10, maybe even 10 out of 10 people would tell you it's Steve Wilks and the 49ers defense that is the biggest cause for concern. Well, you are not alone in your thinking. Former All-Pro cornerback Richard Sherman, who played with a lot of the players that are currently on this team, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. He's played with these guys in this system, and he knows how this defense operates and what they do best. And he does not believe that Steve Wilks is maximizing the talent on this defense. And he actually thinks Steve Wilks' run with the 49ers could come to an end sooner rather than later. Take a listen to what Richard Sherman said on his podcast regarding Steve Wilks and what his fate could look like coming up outside the bye week.
Are they still legitimate contenders in the NFC right now?
It's not looking like it, Mitchell. It's not. I want them to be so bad, and they have been at the beginning of the season, but this Steve Wilks defense, and that's all I can point to, because these are the same culprits that have been number one in the league. This is the same Nicholas John Bosa, who was Defensive Player of the Year. These are the same All-Pros, All-Pro Fred. Eric Armstead had 2 sacks today, but then you get Javon Hargrave. But how are you doing so terrible with this? Joe Burrow only had 4 incompletions on the game, Mitchell. 4 incompletions on the game. He threw for 3 touchdowns, 134.8 passer rating, almost perfect. Jamar Chase had 10 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. Joe Mixon went off for 87 yards on 16 carries. The 2 interceptions we talked about, and we didn't even talk about the fumble at the end. Mitchell, I don't know what's going on with him. I'm sure Kyle doesn't know. I would say, Kyle's definitely not on any kind of hot seat, but Steve Wilks, it may be time to turn the defense over to somebody else, because he is not getting the job done. And that's pretty evident. It was evident earlier in the season, but you kind of try to overlook it and say, hey, maybe it's just a game, maybe it's just the Browns. And, he had a couple mishaps, but then you get the Minnesota game where he runs 0 with 16 seconds to go. And you're like, that call kind of vexed me, perplexed me of sorts. And now you're looking at 31 points from the Bengals, and Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase, they got all the weapons in the world, but they haven't played well this year. This has been this was like medicine for Joe Burrow. This was like medicine. This is the best game I think he's played this season. He's played well throughout other seasons, but against this defense, he's not supposed to play this well. But it's getting too simple. They're running simple concepts. They're running man every dang play, not changing it up, not switching it up. He's trying to pressure. This used to be a 4-man rush team, 4-man rushing, 7 back in coverage, 3 deep, 4 under. They ran a little 6. They ran a little bit of man pressure, but I'm sure Kyle Shanahan, you talked about him being in the meetings last week, and I'm sure he's going to be in the meetings this week. And I wouldn't be surprised if they relieve Steve Wilks of his play calling duties because of how this went.
I am, for one, concerned, Rich.
I'm very concerned, Mitchell. I'm very concerned because I just don't see him being utilized correctly. You see the pass rushing lanes. They look very crowded. It's like, hey, put 2 9s out, put 2 3s, let them rush up the field. I don't understand what we're doing when you're sending everybody to the inside. It's crowded. These tackles aren't even having to get deep in their drops. I don't understand what he's doing. It's been frustrating, but they're going into a bye week. I'm sure they'll get it corrected, but I would not be surprised if they either let Steve Wilks go or they change the play calling duties, because he's not making it work. He has the formula. The formula has been in front of you for the last, 3-4 years. They've played great defense. Robert Saleh ran a certain coverage, certain defense. D'Amico Ryans didn't divvy too far off that path. Steve Wilks is deviating too far off that path. And it's not working. It's not working at all. And so something has to change. They got a lot of things to fix. And I don't know how to – I know how to fix it, Mitchell. I know what the defense should look like. I know what you should be calling. I don't know why he's not calling. It's not that hard. Don't let your pride get in the way of a good season. I'm sure Kyle's about to be in those meetings saying, hey, throw your playbook away. We're bringing the playbook of Robert Saleh and D'Amico Ryans right back, and that's what we're running. And you're going to call these plays. And you might get back on the sideline, because calling it from the booth clearly isn't getting it done.
I agree with a lot of the things that Richard Sherman had to say. He's identifying the differences in the way Steve Wilks is calling games, the differences in how it changes what they do best versus putting them in situations that's not ideal for them. And listen, it really comes down to putting your players in the best position to be successful. And right now, that just isn't happening. So, as you heard from Richard Sherman, he believes that the 49ers could completely turn away from Steve Wilks calling plays, which is how bad he truthfully believes it is. And I would assume that also Richard Sherman is one phone call away from calling someone within the San Francisco 49ers organization to be like, hey, what's going on with the defense? And I'm sure they could provide some additional insight. Now, I don't think Richard Sherman will go out of his way to say that he has heard this or heard that. I mean, you never know. But Sherman is extremely qualified to speak on this topic as all pro cornerback, someone who's played with a lot of these players on this defense, understands where they were the most successful and what types of plays they were successful with. You got to listen to Sherm on this one. And, Sherm is clearly saying that Steve Wilks isn't the guy. And, we've been feeling this for a while based on how Steve calls games. And it really does feel like it's coming to a head. So it's going to be really fascinating to see what the San Francisco 49ers, specifically Kyle Shanahan, what his decisions are outside the bye with Steve Wilks as coordinator. Do they keep him in that role? Do they shift responsibilities to someone else? It is going to be really interesting to see how the 49ers adjust out of the bye. What did you guys think of what Richard Sherman had to say, his comments, and how his thoughts of also fixing the defense and kind of getting back to their old ways? What did you think? Everything that he had to say? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.